The Objective. To deliver the NBA to you like no other. News. Play breakdowns. Power rankings. Storylines you never hear talked about anywhere else. It's all straight shots here, fired by straight shooters. S and Gunn. This is the Objective Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Objective Basketball Podcast. It is free agency time, ladies and gentlemen. We are mere days away from the craziness of free agency. The NBA draft has came and went. It's all done, all finished. We're moving on to the craziness that is free agency, and then summer league and whatnot, and then things start to slow down a little bit, Lauren. Things start to ease up. I'm headed to Italia. I'm headed to Portugal.
I love it.
A little tan on the beach. That's gonna be me very soon. Very soon. I'm counting down the days, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, we are still here. We are still grinding away at the NBA world of things. We appreciate you guys for tuning into the Objective Basketball Podcast. Lauren, we will start here. John Collins has officially been traded for, it took forever. Like, they need to, on that website, the trade finder, trade machine thing, they need to put his jersey. They need to retire his jersey. When you enter the website, it just says, "In ode to John Collins." I think that's the way to go. Look, he's finally somewhere else. He's in the Utah Jazz with the Utah Jazz. They only gave up a second-round pick to acquire him, and obviously Rudy Gay. So that means there's a trade exception going the Hawks' way as well that they can use either this season or in the summer. How do you think? What do you think of the deal in general? It definitely was a salary dump.
Yeah,
but from the Jazz perspective, it's like you got a pretty good player for not that much of a cost. So, what do you think? What do you feel?
I think that's the key right there. I saw Tim Jones actually tweet, "When you get something for free, how can you really complain about it?" Something along those lines, to that effect. And I think that's what sums up this trade, because even though when it first happened, it's like, oh, well, they just drafted Taylor Hendricks and they already had their front court solidified. What does that mean? When you have an opportunity to add someone that's very talented, young, there's you know that you're likely going to be able to flip that asset down the line, especially if you're not in a position where you're trying to really contend for even a title, or you're in the second apron danger zone. If you're not worrying about those things necessarily, and you're focusing on developing, getting experience, all of those things, these are exactly the types of moves that you make. And so when you're a team that has the flexibility to kind of leverage these situations and go out and make sure that you bring someone in, whether he starts, I assume he will start. I have no idea what Coach Hardy and the Jazz are going to do, because they've got so much size. But either way, whether John Collins is there long-term or not, it's a no-lose situation for Utah. And so I think Danny Ainge just continuing to kind of flip these assets was a good move.
Yeah, I agree with you that it was a good move. And you mentioned Danny Ainge. I think this is a very, very Danny Ainge type of move, right?
Right.
You get a depreciated asset. You kind of assume the salary, dump version of this. You kind of say, hey, like, we're not going anywhere. We might as well take this salary on.
Right.
And from that perspective, you can begin to recoup his value. And let's say, you gave up a second round pick, you gave up Rudy Gay to get him, which is not a whole lot. Maybe, in a couple of years, maybe once you've got maybe a couple play-in runs or playoff runs in you, maybe he's recouped his value. Obviously, as his contract goes forward, he will become more valuable because he will become an expiring contract, or a guy with 2 years left on his deal. And therefore it becomes easier to trade a guy like that. So from that perspective, I think this was just a no-brainer from Utah. When it comes to Atlanta, obviously we saw those rumors of them trying to, not even rumors, just reports that they're trying to get under the luxury tax. They're trying to be cost effective with what they're doing. There's still trades for DeAndre Hunter out there that they're looking to maybe potentially do. And maybe they do that. Maybe they do explore a DeAndre Hunter deal. They have the tools, I guess, from a young player perspective to go in a younger direction. We've talked, at the draft, we talked a little bit about AJ Griffin and Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu. And these are guys who I feel like could step into the rotation almost immediately and be contributors on this team. So yes, you can be a little bit more cost effective if you're Atlanta. But I will say it is sort of troublesome that the Hawks aren't willing to invest the money and go into the tax. I'm not saying that they should. I don't think this is the caliber of team that you should be willing to go into the tax for. Most ownership groups don't go into the luxury tax unless they are surefire contenders. And the Hawks aren't. The Hawks are not contenders right now. But I do wonder, and to be fair, Adrian Wojnarowski, when the trade went down, said that, Landry Fields and Kyle Korver have been given approval to go over the luxury tax. So why are they saving money?
Right.
I'm doing my Brian Windhorse. Why? Why are they saving money?
Why would they do that?
There has to be a reason to that. Maybe they see a big fish out there that they want to go and acquire. I know Pascal Siakam has been mentioned in the past, but hey, maybe there's someone else that they're looking at to potentially acquire. Who knows? I'm not sure who that player might be, but I'm interested to see what the Hawks do in this summer, because it doesn't feel like they're going to stop here. This doesn't feel like the end of what they're going to do. Seems like this is the beginning of a lot of activity that's kind of headed their way.
Right. Yeah. And with the Hawks specifically, they're in such an interesting position because while they have enough intriguing young players that have diverse skill sets, you don't want to reset too much to where you're waiting for this development, or you're not competing with Trae Young. And so it's kind of this tightrope that they have to walk, that this front office has to walk. And while DeAndre Hunter, even John Collins before he got dealt, these guys are talented young players that lots of teams would like to have. And so the conversation around all of these players is that their contracts are just they're not good. They're not appealing. Yeah. And while that's true, depending on what team you are, there are so many teams that I think especially with John Collins more specifically, and I think you could say the same about DeAndre Hunter, a change of scenery, you never know what that's going to do for a player, but the majority of times it doesn't hurt. And so, because if you found yourself in a position where you're a disposable asset and you're being shopped, things probably aren't that great, and they might not have been that great for a while. And I'm not even talking about bad relationships, but just the mental toll that takes on you when you're taking steps back as a team. And so Atlanta, while they have these young assets and depth, they're just, it's not coming together. And they're not in a position to continue to sell assets for pennies on the dollar. And so while I agree with you, I do not think that they're done dealing. I'm curious as to what they can really go out and accomplish with Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter, even Bogdanovich, just some of these guys that are available. What do they go out and try to get? Because for your guy, Pascal Siakam, it's really, while I think that they could have put together an intriguing package, I think right now Atlanta's assets are not where Toronto's assets are. And so in terms of value on the open market. And so I really am struggling to see what Atlanta can realistically do that's going to marginally, just really make a difference for them next season. And I think they really need to maybe be realistic with what that could look like for next year and try to maximize in a different market with a different landscape to try and get more back from these assets.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier with Utah and where they might slot in Collins. I think he probably starts. I know they have Taylor Hendricks. Definitely. I know they drafted Taylor Hendricks, but I imagine he comes off the bench and Collins starts. So it would be Kessler, Collins, and Markkanen. And I really like that front court in the sense that there's a combination of shooting, size. Obviously, that's a lot of size in your front court. There's athleticism, and the way Will Hardy has these guys cutting and moving, it's a lot of movement offense. I think Collins is going to thrive in that environment. I really think it's an environment that's going to make him look way better than Atlanta's environment did, where it just was not a lot of ball movement, not a lot of help. It just didn't make a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see which way Atlanta goes. It'll be very, very interesting. Also interested to see what Utah does, because they still have some money that they are left to spend. And obviously they have Jordan Clarkson that they have to deal with as well, which brings us into our free agency section of this podcast. Before we get into free agency, though, ladies and gentlemen, I guess it is free agency time. Get in the game and make your next bet with Sports Interaction. Bet before the game or live in play on all your favorite teams' matchups, or I guess where you think the players are going to go. It doesn't matter to me. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN or download the app to get started. 19 plus, please play responsibly. All right. Well, thank you to our good friends at Sports Interaction. we're going to talk about some of these free agency people. All right. Some of these guys moving, maybe not moving, maybe staying, maybe a sign and trade situation. We're going to try to get as creative as possible while also trying to be realistic when it comes to these destinations. I'll say a name. Okay. We'll discuss. We'll just go through where we think they might go. Maybe they stay, maybe they go. And that'll be it. That'll be the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Simple and easy. The next time you talk to us, I will hopefully be on my way to either Sacramento or Las Vegas, and we will be talking about something a little bit different. Okay, starting with, in my opinion, the biggest kahuna in free agency right now, but maybe the most clear-cut scenario as well, and that's James Harden. James Harden is the big fish to fry here when it comes to free agency. There's been a lot of rumors between Houston and Philadelphia, but it seems like most people are now leaning towards him staying in Philadelphia. Maybe the Nick Nurse hire helped with that. Speaking of Nick Nurse hire, he is no longer the Team Canada coach, by the way. Probably should bring that up. It is Jordy Fernandez who is going to be the Team Canada coach. That's another podcast for another day, ladies and gentlemen. But would you agree with people that say that Harden is going back to Philly?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of momentum right now, but I leaning towards him staying in Philadelphia. Yeah. But what a part of this that I find to be so interesting with Houston specifically is coming away with Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore. I wonder, I'm not saying that completely changed Houston's plans by any means. But if you're Houston and you're kind of looking at the money that you have to spend and just the core that you have, and now you have two of those guys that were projected top 5, top 10. I think that you feel excited about that, and maybe you feel at least a little bit more confident that sticking with the youth movement and bringing in Udoka and just going from there is the way to go. And I think Philadelphia knows and has been praying this whole time that James Harden comes back. So I think
they had no other choice.
That's the plan. There's one plan. It is what it is for them. And I think that just, it's what they want. It gives them more flexibility with keeping Tobias Harris and not having to deal with that situation. So to me, that's where we're headed. I will say at the same time, of all people, James Harden is one of the people that out of nowhere can change their mind.
Yeah. And look, I don't understand the Harden to Houston thing from a basketball on court perspective. They're just so young. They're not in a position to win. And that kind of relates to some of these other guys that they've been linked and rumored to, and I'm sure we'll talk about, but it doesn't make sense to me that they're going to go big fish hunting. Hey, let's go get a Fred VanVleet, who, by the way, we have 1 million guards, but let's go and get Fred VanVleet. Let's go and Brolo to a certain extent makes more sense. You get this defensive rim protector guy that you can have as your backline defender for all these, young rookies that are trying to figure it out. But I still just don't understand why any of these guys would go to Houston. I from a standing in the league type of thing, I don't understand it. Yes, obviously there's no state tax. It's a lot of money. They have a lot of money to offer. I think in a lot of ways it's a leverage play for a lot of these players and a lot of their agents. It's like, hey, Houston has $61 million. Let's just connect ourselves to Houston so that we can get as much as we can from the team that we want to go to. And that successfully happened with the Philadelphia 76ers, which makes it really interesting how they're going to approach his contract. Is it going to be the full max? Is there going to be any kind of partial guarantees? What kind of incentives will be in Harden's deal? Maybe does it, obviously he took a bit of a pay cut. That was the thing with re-signing with Philly. How much is that pay cut now back-ended into this contract?
Right.
And, incorporated into this. So I'm really curious because outside of Harden, the Sixers do have some things that they have to address on the roster. And I don't know how they address those things, if Harden is maxed out and they're kind of dealing with luxury tax and second apron territory and whatnot. Right. So obviously the Maxey extension is coming up too. So you're kind of worried financially about what the Sixers might have to do. Yeah. But at the same time, I think it will be with Philly. End of day, it seems like it'll be Philly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Another guy who I think stays, and I think just based on reports, obviously he was in the meetings for head coaches and whatnot. He was a big part of Adrian Griffin, sorry, that's his son. Adrian Griffin signing on with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think there is no doubt, no question in my mind that Chris Middleton stays with the Milwaukee Bucks. Do you agree? Yeah. Do you disagree?
Yeah, and it's one of those things that it's you feel so confident and you know it's such a sure thing that you're not even really registering him as being a free agent because you just know that he's staying.
Yeah, I mean, I think like realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if June 30th, 6:01, we hear Chris Middleton has signed a max contract
100%.
with the Milwaukee Bucks, 5 years, 200 plus whatever the hell the
Whatever
contract
it
is supposed to be.
yeah.
You know what I mean? He was making $35 million this year. He's probably making a pretty big chunk more than that. I think he will be eligible for his max. So we'll see what the hell happens there. But yes, I think Chris stays. I would be shocked. I would be absolutely shocked, floored if he doesn't stay. All right, staying with the staying stuff. I'd imagine Kyrie Irving stays, and I wanted your perspective on that. You think he's leaning towards staying? I mean, who knows with Kyrie?
Exactly.
You know, but
I do think he's staying. I think Dallas right now, especially even though, like you said, you can't really always pinpoint Kyrie, what he's thinking, what he's going to do. But I think you're getting enough signs from even the Dallas front office and how they're building around this current group that if they felt unsure or like they needed to be rethinking or pivoting or anything on the Kyrie front and how it relates to that, you would be able to connect those dots. And right now, everything that they're doing is showing that they're trying to complement and build around Luka and Kyrie as a duo. In fact, at Omax and Derek Lively's introductory press conference, they talked about Kyrie and his number that he'll be changing to this year.
He's changing numbers. I didn't know that.
Yes, Derek Lively is taking 2 and Kyrie is taking 11.
So interesting. Okay.
That is the case. And so I thought it was interesting that they even mentioned Kyrie because, of course, if they pull out his jersey and he's number 2 and Kyrie was just, then you have a frenzy going on Mavs Twitter. But so I think right now the signs are pointing in the direction that he stays.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you as well. Unless there's like barring some late swing by the Lakers, which again, I really don't think they're going to do it. I think they're more invested in keeping this core together. They obviously made it to the Western Conference Finals. I'm sure they feel confident in the fact that, hey, we stay healthy. We work around the margins a little bit more. And I think they're in a position to do that again this year. So yeah, we'll see. I'm going to keep on the staying side of things because I feel like we're just going to keep pushing forward and seeing names that are most likely going to stay.
Yeah.
Kristaps Porzingis, he's already traded to the Boston Celtics. There's been talks about an extension. I imagine he stays. Let's just check that off the list right there. Nikola Vucevic. How do you feel about that? I think there's no question that he stays, but
really?
I mean,
you just don't think the market's there.
Woohoo! Where else? I don't know. Where else? San Antonio, I could maybe see if San Antonio was like, okay, we could use another big next to Wemby. We have a bunch of money. Let's throw it at him. Why not? But again, why would Vooch do that? I don't see a reason why Vooch would do that. I just don't know where else would make sense for Vooch that has cap space, you know?
Yeah, it's fair. I don't really know where else he would go. I mean, people have thrown out Orlando just because of the long-standing relationship, but
that would be funny.
It would be funny, wouldn't it? And on one hand, it's like why they have so much front court depth, not necessarily at the true 5 where Vooch plays, but they have so much front court depth and even versatile lineups that they could throw out there. Why would they bring someone like Vooch in? I guess on one hand, I'm like, you can bring him in if you want to spend the money and then flip him later if you need to, or have him be a veteran presence. And I could see that. But for so long, Orlando, there was a conversation about them throwing money at Fred. And so there are just, to me, there are questions up in the air about what direction they could go in free agency. And as far as the rest of the other free agency teams that have cap space, I just can't necessarily see them taking a swing on Vooch fit wise. I don't know. So, but at the same time, I do want to say this with Chicago and with Vooch, I just don't know that that's like the most. I don't know that that's the most like healthy situation.
Relationship. I understand.
Yeah.
I got
so
you.
Yeah. From that, I'm like, the extension would have happened by now. The looking for houses and in different states would not be taking place if it were.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a done deal or
Yeah.
what's going to happen there. I won't be surprised if he stays, but if he leaves, I also will not be surprised one bit because I don't know.
Who
So many
knows?
questions with Chicago.
There is a world where we see Chicago do a lot of sign-in trades, like a sign-in trade with Vooch, maybe a sign-in trade to get another free agent and then move DeRozan somewhere. I mean, there is possibilities that Chicago shakes things up. And like in the press conference that they had, they seemed like they were very adamant about making a big splash this summer. Who knows how successful they'll be in doing so. But I think my money is on Vooch staying. I think that's most likely it. I'm going to stay on this staying front though. And a guy who maybe has had more conversations around him, but I still think he stays, and that's Draymond Green. Yeah. I know there's been Sacramento rumor. There's the Mike Brown relationship, all that stuff. Damian Lillard said Portland, Draymond Green would be his dream free agency, pick, what have you. I still think that it's going to be Golden State. I would be absolutely shocked, floored, if Draymond decides to go somewhere else. Yeah. And I think it's telling that the Warriors traded Jordan Poole because it was exactly for them to have the flexibility in order to re-sign Klay Thompson and re-sign Draymond Green. That was, I would say, 90% of the reason they traded Jordan Poole was so that they could do exactly what we expect them to do, and that's re-signing Green. Do you think there's a chance that Sacramento or Portland get in on the action and maybe make this interesting, or no?
I mean, I'll be curious to see what dollar amount Sacramento throws at Draymond, because they're going to throw something at him, but I just don't really see it being legitimate interest, even given the relationship, given all of the things. I don't see it really being there. Yeah. And I hate to even say this, but the Portland Draymond dreams. As soon as funny. I saw that, I'm like, what am I reading? Yeah. What am I reading? Why?
We need less updates from Damian Lillard.
We do. I saw your tweet, and that was right on the money. I just am like, come on. There's no feasible way in which this makes sense for Golden State. And so that's why I think it's almost as sure of a thing as even like someone like Chris Middleton. I think you could throw that out there. But yeah, I'm curious to see what the dollar amount ends up being for all the reasons that you mentioned, the leverage situation, the second apron, all of these things. I do wonder what that looks like.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I've had a lot of Sacramento people be like, oh, Draymond would be good. Draymond would be good. And I will say right here, I do not like the Draymond fit in Sacramento. Okay. I really do not think that is the right move to make. Yeah. He is a defensive genius. He is an absolute genius. He's one of my favorite defenders of all time. I will make videos and write stuff about Draymond until he retires, and maybe even after he retires. Mm-hmm. But I think as far as what Sacramento needs as a defender is less about Draymond and more about what they need around Sabonis and Fox. And that means you need a rim protector type. You need a guy who's going to be able to bang down low. And I agree Draymond can do that at times, but you need someone who's going to be blocking shots for you, a guy who's going to be deterring guys at the basket. Draymond isn't necessarily that. He's more of a switch big. He's more of a guy who's going to be able to guard multiple positions for you, cover space, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, that could help Sacramento. But I just don't see why you would have two non-shooters in Draymond and Sabonis on the court at the same time offensively and think you're going to still have the number one offense in the league. I just don't. I don't see it. No matter how much Draymond's passing and basketball acumen will help that team, I just don't see the fit making as much sense as a guy that we've mentioned before in Kyle Kuzma. I really think Kyle Kuzma is a guy who's like, go Sacramento, go get Kuzma. That's the guy who you can build around. He's around the same age as Fox and Sabonis and those guys, and they can kind of usher into that next generation of Kings, Kings playoff runs, if you will. Mm-hmm. I think Draymond stays. I think.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I would stick with that. Okay. Let's keep going on stays, shall we? It's crazy to say this because we've listed 7 of the top free agents, and most likely all of these guys are going to stay. More than likely. Unless something absolutely insane happens, unless someone spits in that person's tea at the free agency meeting, I don't think that happens. I really don't see anything happening that like stops us from doing that. It becomes a little bit more interesting with the next list of names that I'm going to bring up, though, because there are possibilities that these people potentially move. Jeremy Grant, how do you feel about that? Where do you feel on Jeremy Grant's situation?
Well,
he's looking for a lot of money. He is looking for a lot of money.
I think if you're Portland right now, you really don't have an option of just letting him walk, even in a sign and trade scenario. I just think Portland is in a position where they're going to have to shell out the money kind of no matter what it is, as crazy as that might sound, and deal with the consequences later, unless conversations with Damian Lillard are further along than what's being reported. To me, that's the only scenario in which there's any kind of up in the air with Jeremy Grant. But if what's out there right now is what's most accurate and true, then they have to bring back Jeremy Grant, because if they don't,
what else?
What else? Yeah,
I agree.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
The only way I can really see Grant moving is if there's a sign and trade for another player that they like and they enjoy. So if let's say for some reason the Milwaukee Bucks, they want to do a double sign and trade, Brook Lopez goes to the to the Portland Trailblazers, then you have Jeremy Grant and Yusuf Nurkic going to the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't hate that.
That's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't hate that for either team, actually.
Yeah.
But you could see something along the lines of that maybe happening, maybe transpiring if the Bucks want to shake things up, if the Trailblazers want to shake things up. Hey, maybe if Draymond is dead set on going to Portland, you do a double sign and trade and you sign Portland. Portland gets Draymond and the Warriors get Jeremy Grant, right?
Yeah.
I still agree with you. I think Dame was really, really adamant about keeping Jeremy Grant in his postseason press conference. He's like, yeah, Jeremy's going to be staying here next season. You guys will be seeing him. So when he's giving off that energy, I imagine that's one of the things where you need on your checklist where it's like, that guy's probably going to stay.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you.
Okay. Even less likely now. And this is where free agency starts, in my opinion, because we have listed all those guys and all those guys are most likely going to stay. Look, I think Fred VanVleet is the big kahuna of the rest of these guys in free agency. And it's crazy to say that about an undrafted point guard who's undersized, 29 years old, et cetera, one-time All-Star. But it goes to show you that this free agency class isn't the strongest. It is not the most touted free agency class, if you will. But that is great news for Fred, who will be able to really determine the market here money-wise. There's been reports of Houston. I've heard murmurs of Orlando and Los Angeles. There's reports coming out that, he might be looking at maybe Chicago in a sign-in trade situation. So there's options out there. From the Raptors' perspective, I will say losing Fred VanVleet for nothing would be a pretty disastrous scenario, because it's not like they open up a max slot money-wise in order to just go out and chase another point guard or another guard that they have. And, as we've talked about before on this podcast, the Raptors don't necessarily have a ton of point guard depth. You only have Malachi Flynn and Delano Banton and Jeff Doughton. Like, those guys aren't necessarily going to step in and be your starting point guard. Right. And if you have any intentions of running this roster back, then you probably, at whatever amount, need to re-sign Fred VanVleet. It's sort of like the James Harden situation in Philly, where you don't really have a second option here. The Sixers don't have a second option if James Harden decides to walk to Houston. The same thing applies to Fred VanVleet and the Raptors, in the sense that if he walks, they don't have $30 million. I think that if he walks and they re-sign Pirtle, they probably have around $17 million in cap space, which is, $5 million more than the MLE. Okay, maybe they can throw money at a Gabe Vincent and say, hey, we'll Miami is offering you the MLE, we'll give you MLE plus $5 million. Come here, And maybe
that's interesting.
Yeah, maybe that's the second option here. Hi, what's going on? The cat
out of nowhere, truly out of nowhere.
Yeah, that was like a ghost in the night. That was scary.
I just can't.
Anyways, look, there are options out there for Fred. I think from a perspective of covering his career, go get your money, King. Like, do whatever happens money wise. If Houston, it was reported today by Jake Fisher that they're willing to offer a $40 million annual deal, 2 years, $80 million. I don't think the Raptors can't match that. Like, they physically, money wise, cannot match that unless they tack on more years and include a third or a fourth year in there. And then from that point, you're saying, okay, like, are we betting on a guy to, 29? He's had a couple leg injuries. Or do we want to give him 3 years, 4 years, or do we want to just let him walk and deal with the repercussions of that? Again, from the Raptors side, it would be a huge blow for them to just let Fred walk. They would probably prefer to work out a sign and trade with Orlando or Los Angeles or even retain him themselves. I think at the end of the day, like James Harden, Houston is just a leverage tool. And I think that Fred will ultimately re-sign with the Raptors at probably a price that makes Raptors fans a little bit more uncomfortable than they would like. But I think it will be the right move regardless because they don't have a second choice. Yeah. It'll probably be somewhere around $35 million a year.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because, when you say $35 million a year, like, holy crap, that's massive money. I mean, we're just talking about Chris Middleton, who's making $35 million last year. But that is only 25% of the cap, ladies and gentlemen. And Fred VanVleet is worth 25% of the cap. He is that caliber of player. So that's all I got on that front. Where do you sit on Fred? Do you think he stays? Do you think he goes?
I do think he stays. There are many reasons why I think he stays, just in terms of like being comfortable there, feeling like he can have success there. I can see Toronto, like you said, offering him maybe a little bit more than they want to, maybe a little bit more than fans are comfortable with. But for the sake of keeping him, and like you mentioned, he's only 29 years old, and even some of the criticisms that he's gotten over maybe the last year, 2 years, wherever you want to pinpoint it, I do still think that he's a really solid player that has a lot of value. I will say I think you could debate how much value he really has on an open market, but like I've tweeted probably 10,000 times that timing is everything right now. And a team like the Clippers has really needed Fred VanVleet at times. A team like the Phoenix Suns has really needed a Fred VanVleet at times. So I think it will make the most sense for Toronto to bring him back. When you were talking about Orlando and a sign and trade, my mind went back to a little snippet that I saw at one point. It was a report that Orlando may try and look at potentially moving on or just exploring options for Jalen Suggs or Cole Anthony. Yeah. And so I think something like that could be really intriguing.
And they just drafted Anthony Black too, right?
Exactly. So I'm curious as to what something like that could look like if Orlando is really serious. And I think with Houston, the money's going to be there. But what I'm really, really kind of keeping my eye on is how hard Ime Udoka pushes for it. Does he feel like this is what this organization needs for stability, to the point where they're so aggressive with it and the money is there and that's enough for Fred? But all that said, I do still think that I would feel pretty confident saying that he does go back.
Yeah, I mean, look, if the Rockets end up adding a third year, there's just no way the Raptors can compete.
That is so much money, and it's hard to envision someone turning that down. And there was another thing that I wanted to say. When you mentioned the 35 annually for the Raptors, even whether that's it or ballpark or whatever the case may be, it's so interesting to me how the cap is and how, like you mentioned, 25%. Karl Anthony Towns is going to be eligible for an extension that has him making over $60 million a year next year. There are so many times when we're talking about 20 million, 25 million for your first or second or third best player, maybe not first, second or third, but definitely third or fourth best player. Like 25 million, 30 million is not what it used to be in the league. No. I think when you're looking at bringing a guy like Fred back, if you're uncomfortable with 35 million, that money can get moved if needed. It's not this massive just albatross of a contract. And so I think it's important to remember that, because sometimes when I see these contracts like the Karl Anthony Towns extension, I'm like, God, that's an insane amount of money, but that's just where we are.
Yeah. I mean, 60 million right now is about 45% of the cap. So, I mean, it goes to show you that like the percentage of what stars are getting and what gets allocated to the salary cap is rising, right? You're seeing more vet min contracts, more minimum contracts, more MLE guys. You're also seeing the price of the MLE go up. You're seeing the price of whatever go up. Everything is moving up. So an $18 million contract 4 years ago is the same as a $5 million contract today. It's very different now compared to before. And we can't be gauging based on the prices of, 2017, 2018.
Right, exactly.
Still imagine that Fred resigns. The other answer, you kind of brought it up with Houston, and maybe Ime Udoka is really hell bent on this, but like I just don't understand why they would need more guards. I agree. You have MN Thompson, you have Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore. You have so many guards. I just don't understand why Fred would make a lot of sense for Houston, unless they're hell bent on maybe moving a couple of their guards and shifting things out that way. Who knows if that's a way to make things work, but we'll see. I think Fred ultimately does stay. Yeah. I think the Raptors will win when it comes to the years. They'll probably offer more years than Houston does, but if Houston offers a third year at $40 million, even if it's partially guaranteed, the Rockets will get Fred VanVleet. Yes.
You think so?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because it's just the Raptors can't offer that. Like it's just like,
and I part of me, like, I feel like that's such a Houston Rockets thing to do.
Yeah.
Is it like,
I don't know.
I don't know.
They are hell bent on making the playoffs. I don't know. I don't even know if Fred is enough for that. Look, the report was Fred and Dillon Brooks, and like, okay, so you have Alperen Şengün, Dillon Brooks, Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., and Fred VanVleet. Does that even get you to 10 in the Western Conference? I don't think so. I really don't think so. We just saw one of the craziest playoff races of all time for the play-in spot, one in which your Dallas Mavericks just bowed out of diligently, because Thank they God. Were like, you know what, we're good. We don't even need it. We don't even need it. That goes to show you how hard it is to get into the play-in race. And the Rockets want to do that. They will need to get these big kahunas. Okay, so let's say Brook Lopez goes to Houston. Now it's Brook Lopez, Fred VanVleet. Now you're thinking like, okay, maybe there's a chance they get to that 10 spot, really healthy season. Maybe Jalen Green makes that all-star jump, et cetera, et cetera. You could see it. But right now, as things stand, I don't understand how you can go from worst team in the league to, hey, we're just going to sign a bunch of guys and see if this thing works. I don't believe that.
I do real quick on Houston. I actually want to touch on Houston real quick because they seem so ready and eager to spend this money. And to me, Dillon Brooks, like, that makes a lot of sense for many reasons. I don't think it's going to be overly expensive, and I think you could flip him down the line if it doesn't work out. But going out and spending this money because you're looking to compete now, there are questions with Kevin Porter Jr., questions even with Jalen Green, who's your guy. He's number one. And even Jabari Smith, who struggled a lot last year. I think right now the focus needs to be on, you got a new coach who has proven himself. You need to be focusing on growing this talent organically and in-house before, necessarily going out and just cashing out on all this money. Not saying that, they're going to find themselves as a second apron team and be in a world of trouble, but like, I just think it's rushing the timeline a little bit, and they would be better off potentially looking at moving some of these guys or consolidating or moving some assets as opposed to going out and spending money. Like the Brook Lopez thing, I've seen that for so long now, and I guess I'm just not getting it. Why that would make sense for them. And so I don't know what Houston's going to do, but I do think the Fred VanVleet is kind of alarmingly it's the big thing. Like you said, it's the big domino that's got to fall because everyone else, kahuna. I think the big kahuna, that's what it was. There it is. So that's kind of my thoughts on Houston, but we'll see what they do.
I agree. And look, like the new CBA makes it so that you can't just walk into next season with $60 million in cap space. You have to spend and be at least 90% fulfilled cap space wise. So they do have to spend the money somewhere. But I feel like there are different ways that they can go about this that would make more sense for their roster long term. Anyways, we'll see what happens with Fred. We kind of touched on Brolo. I think he also stays. I really think, given where the Bucks are at, I don't think they're in a position where they can let Brolo go unless they can find a genuine replacement for Brolo. And I don't know where that replacement is and who that replacement is. Obviously, we talked about this when the Bucks got eliminated, but they are older. Chris Middleton is getting older. Brolo is obviously up there in age. Drew Holiday is getting older. So there's the question of how they can maneuver and get younger. But I still think they re-sign Brolo, which is crazy to say. It feels like we're saying re-sign for all of these players, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh man, this one I think is interesting because after last year, I think this could be his opportunity to go out and kind of get this last contract that's not, a discount just for the sake of being on a contender. Especially if he's still producing the way he did last year, he's going to be if he goes to a rebuilding team or a retooling team, whoever you want to call it. If he goes there and takes the contract, he's going to be a name that gets talked about come trade deadline time, and even like come buyout market time potentially. And so, I think for him that this is a situation where if I'm Brook Lopez or I'm Brook Lopez's agent, I think you could go out potentially, and get out on the market and kind of see where things go. And a lot of these teams don't need front court depth. We've kind of talked about that a little bit more so with Vooch. But with Brook Lopez, I think it's a cheaper price, and someone that that you could then flip. And so I could see OKC, who has even needed some floor spacing at times.
That's not bad. I like that. Yeah.
I could see Detroit, there's no minutes for Brook Lopez, but no. I'm just so used to Troy Weaver picking up someone, turning around, selling them, buying low, selling high, buying low, selling high. So I don't know, but I kind of expect Brook to go out and see what's out there on the open market as opposed to just penciling him in for the discount to stay back. But at the same, because I also think that Milwaukee finds themselves in a position where they could also have options. They'll have options on vet minimum guys. They'll have options to go out on the buyout market. So I think that they could fill his role more easily if they needed to, if that wasn't a price they wanted to pay.
Yeah, I feel you. I agree with that. It's going to be interesting to see what Milwaukee does because Chris and Brolo are just so important to what that team is championship contending wise. I know it's hard to look back at last season and say, well, they lost in the first round and like there's no reason for them to run this thing back. Maybe some people will say that, but it's just you have to. You have Giannis. You have to take advantage of this situation. You obviously has, by the way, another windy moment here, but Giannis is up for a contract extension in September. And if that goes away, now these things start snowballing. So let's say you let go of Brook Lopez. Let's say you re-sign Chris Middleton. And for some reason, Giannis is not happy because he doesn't have a center to help him on the back line. September comes around. He's like, you know what? I'm going to pass on that extension. I'll see you guys in 2026. And hey, now things start to get tricky. So you never want to be in that position if you're a front office. Let's go through a couple of different names just real quick because we are kind of going long here, but we'll do a rapid fire here. Okay?
Rapid fire. Stay or go? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And if you want to throw out a team or whatever, we can do that too. Okay? Russell Westbrook, stay or go?
Stay.
Yeah, I think he stays too. Especially with the Malcolm Brogdon deal falling apart. I think he stays. Yeah. D'Angelo Russell, stay or go?
Go.
Where do you think he goes?
Boy, that's an interesting one. I actually selfishly would love to see him go to the Spurs, but I just can't see that happening. I could see him going. Let's see.
I actually kind of like the Spurs. I didn't hate that.
I like the Spurs. I was actually having this conversation with my brother, and he was like, it just makes too much sense. We were talking about it, and I was like, I can't see D'Lo wanting to go to San Antonio, but in terms of not having to really play any defense and just focusing on feeding Wemby, getting development, building your value back up, and then going out and pretty much kind of restarting from there, as opposed to what
he's not a very Spursy guy. That's the only thing I would say. The fit,
you think about it and you're like, but I think it could be fun. I don't see it happening. But I think D'Lo is one of those names that the market could really dry up for someone like D'Lo.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm not sure.
He's probably not going to get the money he's expecting from anyone outside of the Lakers also. So.
I actually, you know what? I hate to say this. I wouldn't be surprised if he went to Phoenix on like a real cheap contract.
He can't. Like, I mean, like, what else? How much money does Phoenix have? Like, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
think it would be that little of money out on the open market that he could wind up in. Because I go back to some of these guys like Dennis Schroeder and but that's a poor example. But these guys that have found themselves in markets that aren't there and need to go where there are going to be a ton of eyes on them, where they can try to pull a Malik Monk and have like no place to go, and then all of a sudden you're signing for whatever 2 years, 20 million. So I can see him trying to do something like that and trying to win a ship. And plus he's close with Book. So yeah, I could see Phoenix, but I have no idea where he's going to end up.
Okay. Harrison Barnes, I say go, and I say Indiana.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think that I'm with you right there. I think it makes a lot of sense for everyone involved, and there's lots of reporting on it with the connection, so I can see it.
The Rick Carlisle connection going back to Dallas, Tyrese Halliburton going back to Sacramento. It's seems
too perfect.
It's too perfect to not happen. Kyle Kuzma, we already sort of talked about this week and last week. We both think Sacramento is the way that's going to happen. Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. Let's see if there's anybody else. Jakob Poeltl, I imagine, resigns, by the way. Just a quick, I think they re-sign both those guys and just run it back and see what happens. Hey, who knows, though? If San Antonio does end up re-signing Jakob Poeltl, I will officially stop reporting on basketball. Bruce Brown, what do you think about Bruce Brown? He seems like a guy who could go anywhere, but
yeah, I mean, I think he goes. I think it's his time to go get the money.
Houston,
I think Houston could be interesting. The young, they've got the money. He's shown that he can compete. I like Houston.
I really like San Antonio.
I really like San Antonio as well. I mean, there truly are. Even Sacramento, if Sacramento is swinging and a miss, I think that could be real interesting too. So I think Bruce is going to have his pick of the litter.
I think there's a world where Sacramento, with $35 million in cap space, and yes, I know they can go and get Sabonis and do an extension that way. I imagine they probably do that, but there is a world where Sacramento can fit in 2 players there in that $35 million. So let's say you go out and get Bruce Brown and Kyle Kuzma, and now you have Bruce Brown and Kyle Kuzma, a part of the Sacramento Kings, with Sabonis, with Fox, with Herter, with Monk, all those guys. Man, that would be a fun team. And it would fit so incredibly well.
It would fit great. Oof, that'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. So Max Strus apparently is wanted by everyone. Where do you think Max Strus is going to go? I could see Houston being an option.
Yeah, I could see
San Antonio. I could see also San Antonio is interesting because, a shooter.
Yeah.
He probably resigns, right? He probably resigns.
I mean, I think he'd like to resign. I don't know what Miami, I'm so having trouble pinpointing Miami right now because I think their moves are so up in the air. And I tweeted this out, I think it was maybe yesterday, that say they pull the trigger on Dame ahead of free agency. How does that affect Gabe Vincent and Max Strus?
Right.
How does that affect them? And so,
well, they have to say bye to them. That's what it would be.
They have to, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, in my mind, that's exactly where I went. And then I had a lot of people saying, no, you just have to pay the money, you have to pay the tax, and you have to bring them back.
They can't.
I'm like, well,
they literally can't.
They can't.
Yeah, they would be a second apron team, and it
doesn't work. And so at that point, I do think that that's where their head is at right now. And so I think that's going to leave opportunity for a team to come in and get either of those two. And so for Max, every team needs shooting. Every single team. So
absolutely.
I guess let me ask you this. You think he's an MLE guy?
I think he is. Like, look, Naz Reid just went for the MLE. A little bit more than the MLE.
A little bit more,
13 and a half. I could see Max Strus getting the MLE.
Okay,
full MLE.
You could.
Full
MLE. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that opens it up a lot more. So, I mean, shoot. I don't know. That's
How about
a tough one.
Cleveland? How do you feel about Cleveland? Because they're desperate. They
need shooting.
They need the shooting. They need a guy at 3. I think Strus is. I
like it. I like it. I mean, Karis LeVert's a free agent, so they got to replace that if they don't intend to bring him back. And I think Max Strus is a better fit than probably Karis LeVert. So I don't hate that one bit.
Okay, I'll ask you about your guy Christian Wood. Where does he go?
I knew it was coming.
Yeah. But where? I don't even know where. Like, does a reunion in Houston make sense? No, not really, right?
Yeah, I don't see that one. I tweeted this out earlier. I'm wondering if there's a sign and trade with the Clippers that could could potentially take place. And I want to.
And you get Norm Powell?
We get Norm Powell or Rob Covington, one of the two. Right. I could see something like that taking place. Who knows? I could also see Detroit. I don't know. Detroit with the flipping assets,
Detroit,
having
every
because they had interest in Jeremy Grant. They've got all these. I'm like, what do you do anyway? But
I think Detroit's gonna go. From what I've sources say, Detroit is going hard for Cam Johnson, man. Like they are.
Oh yeah.
They're willing to spend everything they have.
They should.
On Cam Johnson.
I think they need to just go for it. Could you imagine they get in there and steal Cam Johnson? That'd be amazing. But
yeah, I mean, look, I feel like the Nets probably match, but they're gonna try their best to.
Yeah, I feel like Christian Wood. What I was gonna say is I did my research, covered it with CBA Mavs. Mavs Twitter knows them very well.
Yeah.
If the Mavs try and pursue a sign and trade with Christian Wood, they're not really going to be able to do anything in free agency that's not bringing in vet minimum guys after if they try to go out and do some sort of sign and trade.
Do they get hard capped? Is that what it is?
Yes. So like they couldn't theoretically, which I didn't realize this. They couldn't theoretically go trade Christian Wood for Norm Powell and then go use the full MLE and bring in Bruce Brown. They can't do that. And so that's why I tweeted out the Norm Powell situation with the Clippers having had interest in Christian Wood at the deadline. Right. I think that there could be something there. And if you're Dallas and you're kind of looking around and your intel is telling you that Max Strus won't be available, Bruce and Harrison, Kuz, all those guys are going for way over the MLE, then I do think that you seriously kind of negotiate some or look around at the sign and trade landscape for someone like Christian Wood.
There's so many names. I'm looking through this list, and there's so many other names that we could talk about, ladies and gentlemen. Gabe Vincent, Jalen McDaniels. You have the lower name guys like a Yuto Watanabe, Trey Lyles. I think there's like, as much as the star level talent in this free agency isn't there, I think there is a depth to this free agency, and you could see teams adding, especially with this new CBA, you could see guys signing for way less than they're supposed to. Or maybe even way more than they're supposed to, just because of this new CBA. It's going to be a very, very weird. Some of these numbers that come in on Friday, we're going to look at that and be like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But even the Naz Reid situation, even Naz Reid re-signing for 13.5, I was like, wow, I'm pretty surprised, because if I'm Gary Trent Jr. is making $18 million. Okay. I think Naz Reid is a better player than Gary Trent Jr. right now. I think Naz Reid is a better player than Gary Trent Jr.
Yeah.
I think Naz Reid could be a starter on a lot of NBA teams.
Absolutely.
He could have probably made more than $13.5 million, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that apparently wasn't out there for him. Maybe there's something going on with the CBA that has these teams a little bit more hesitant to cough up that money. So I'm curious to see what happens with a lot of these guys, the big name guys, the MLE guys, the guys who are like in between an MLE and some bigger money, and then, guys who are like fighting for the vet mins and non-taxpayer mid-level exceptions. It's going to be crazy. Yeah, just to stay in the league. I mean, hell, who knows? It's going to be absolutely insane, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you guys, free agency in the NBA just never disappoints. There's always some kind of craziness. I know the Damian Lillard saga is what is captivating 90% of NBA Twitter, whether we want it to or not. It is captivating everybody, and we'll see what happens on that front. Maybe Dame gets moved. Maybe some of, we didn't really talk about it, but like maybe Simons or Grant or Nurkic or those guys get moved, and we see the Blazers take a new shape around Dame. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But thank you for tapping in to the Objective Basketball Podcast. We won't have a second podcast this week. We will react and recap the podcast bonanza, the free agency bonanza, I should say, that happens on Friday and Saturday for you guys starting next week. So thank you very much for tuning in to the Objective Basketball Podcast. We will see you guys later.
Just S. Baraheni on all socials and at the Lauren Gunn on Twitter. The Objective Basketball Podcast, delivering the NBA to